Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah, I'm able to hear you. Yeah,
Hope you can see my screen as well.
yes,
yeah,
correct.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining the session. Uh, a quick introduction about myself. My name is Ram Prasad. I'm working as an application expert with Infineon, working on digital workplace and collaboration spaces. And I've been working with SharePoint for last 12 years now. Started with Moz and eventually till SharePoint Online. So worked on almost all flavors of SharePoint, and I also work on Azure and bot framework and other products from the Office 365 suite. These are my social media handles. I blog a lot, and I also speak regularly. And I'm also a contributor for the PNP JS V2. So if you guys already know it, or PNP JS is a Fluent API which helps us to interact with the SharePoint. And these are my social media handles. You can reach out to me for anything. Before I start, a big thank you for the organizers for making this event, and thanks for all the sponsors. I think bringing the community together, it's really helping everyone to learn and get engaged. Once again, thanks a lot for making this happen. So, jumping to the session, what are we going to talk about today is Power Virtual Agents. Uh, and roughly we'll see what are Power Virtual Agents and why do we need it. And I'll talk a little bit about licensing and the core concepts of Power Virtual Agents. And before starting the session, I think chatbots, that's what we'll be creating today. I think chatbot doesn't need an introduction now. It's everywhere, and it's almost used by everyone, right? So before we go, let's understand why do we need Power Virtual Agents, right? So 2 years back, or I would say before Power Virtual Agents came in, the bot development was very cumbersome. Like it's very tedious. Like if you look at the bot framework, we had many services, like we can use Lewis for doing NLP, and we can use Q&A maker, and then there is a bot framework which will host it as an app service. There are a lot of components which are spread across on Azure and some on premise, so it all depends on the architecture what we are following. And maintaining such an architecture, we always needed good amount of experts, right, from different domains. We wanted data scientists, we needed IT admins to manage the infrastructure, and we needed a good amount of developers to build such a thing, right? uh, if you look at these are all very sometimes very expensive and sometimes very difficult to maintain, right? So that's one I would say a challenge we had in the previous or the traditional bot framework methodologies. And another area which we had issues is there is a lot of gap between the developers, or we can also call data scientists, who actually work on building the data models and on the AI, and the subject matter experts or the domain experts who actually knows what features they need on a bot, and what is that they want to build, right? There is always a gap between these two professionals, and there is always whenever the requirements are transferred, there is always some amount of data loss there. And what the end user wanted to see, the data scientist would have understood a different thing, and they would have implemented in a different way, right? These are one of a few other challenges uh, which we had. And it's also very difficult to integrate the bots. So if you look at bot framework, if at all we wanted to have a channel which is on Microsoft Teams or WebEx Teams or any other channel, it's like we have to build a custom connector there, and it's all custom what we have to build. Coming to these challenges, how Power Virtual Agents are going to help us is, this clearly is designed for citizen developers, like we'll see in the demos going forward. We can easily build up a chatbot for most of the scenarios. Some basic scenarios, we can build up a chatbot without writing a single line of code, and we can expose it to multiple channels, be it on your custom website or Teams, or it can also be an email. And here we can also give the flexibility to the subject matter experts, where they can come in and they'll have a direct interface where they can put in all the data which they need, instead of passing on the data to a developer or a data scientist and working with them, they can actually work on the bot by themselves. So that's what a Power Virtual Agent does. And if you look at the background, uh, going a little bit into the technical aspects, Power Virtual Agents is in fact built on top of bot framework. So it behind the scenes we'll have bot framework. It also uses Power BI for analytics, and it uses Luis as well for all the NLP capabilities. So it's a kind of a wrapper on top of all these technologies, and giving us an easy way to create and manage bots. So so to quickly say, I think without any data scientists or without developers, it will definitely help us create a bot. So roughly, just to give an introduction, I think that's what a Power Virtual Agent is. And coming to the licensing, as of now, there are two variants or two flavors of Power Virtual Agents, what we have. First one is we can have Power Virtual Agents for Teams. So this is something like if you're having a paid Teams license, you can definitely start using Power Virtual Agents with no additional cost. But there are some catches here. So you can use this for free until you're using a premium connector within your flow, or if you want to expose your bot to a premium channel. So premium channel is anything which is other than Microsoft Teams. So if you want to run your custom bot on a website or any other channel, then that goes into the Power Virtual Agents standalone license, which is also the Power Virtual Agents Online. So Power Virtual Agents Online is another flavor which has a lot more capabilities and a feature set compared to Teams, and that's where it comes with the price. So if you look at the pricing, uh, the license cost is around $1,000 per month. And what do we get with these licenses? Anyone assigned with this license can create 1,000 bots using that license. And there is also a limit on the number of sessions which we can have within that license. So it's about 2,000 sessions per month. So we need to really understand what is a session here, because that helps us in planning the licensing part and all. So what is a session? A session is basically an interaction between a user and a bot. So while going through the demos, I'll give a better explanation, or I'll walk you through in detail. But for now, I think a session is something like when a user initiates a discussion with a bot, and he finishes the chat. It's not just one question; it's multiple questions which users can ask within that entire chat discussion. That's called as one session. Or there is another condition: if the chat is going longer, like if it is more than 60 minutes, then it is considered as one session, even though the user is still continuing the chat with the bot. If it's more than 60 minutes, or if it has exceeded 100 turns, then it's considered as a session. So what is a turn? A turn is nothing but one request from the user and one response back from the bot is called a turn. That's one turn, right? So before we jump into the demos, so this is the place where you can find a lot of information about Power Virtual Agents. You can go to powervirtualagents.microsoft.com. This has all the documentation, and it also has good. Uh, okay, looks like there's some problem with my PowerPoint. Let me quickly open the slides. Yeah, so this is the place where you find all the information. So I would recommend, if you are new to Power Virtual Agents, start learning from here. You'll have all the resources here. You can have a self-paced learning, and you can also follow the documentation. So I'll quickly walk through to the documentation, not in detail, but just to get you a brief understanding of what you can get from here. And this explains all the different aspects. So what all feature sets we have. So it also has like we have seen the two variants, which is Power Virtual Agents Online and Power Virtual Agents in Teams. And before that, these are the common concepts between these two variants. One is the licensing, and then quotas and rate limits and all these things. So this is the best place to get all the information about Power Virtual Agents. So I'll also send across this link. Right. So then let's quickly jump into the demos. So for this demos, I'll be using the Power Virtual Agents for Teams variant. Like we have seen, it's a free variant which we can use if you're already using Teams. And I think if you're already using Teams, and if we start using Power Virtual Agents for Teams, I think we'll bring in more value for what we are already paying, right? And let's start to get started. There is an app called Power Virtual Agents. This is how you start building apps within your teams. So you can search for it and add this. As I have already added this app, it will just directly open the app. But if you're doing it for the first time, there will be a prompt saying add this app to your team. And when you're doing it for the first time, it will take a couple of minutes, let's say around 5 minutes to set up the app, right? So I already have the app, and this is how it looks like. It's very clean and pretty straightforward. Not much of options for us to get confused. And I already have a bot here, but I'll quickly show you how to create a new chatbot. So you can just click on the new chatbot here, and it will ask us to select a team, right? So I'll just choose the team M365 BLR, and then it asks for a bot name and a language. That's pretty much information what it expects from us. There is nothing else what we have to give. And once we give this information, like I mentioned at the background, because it uses the bot framework, it will automatically set up all the infrastructure for us. Though we'll not be able to see it, but that's what happens at the background. It will set up all the AI capabilities and the bot services for us. So I'll not create a bot now as it takes time. So I'll use the existing bot. And this is a plain bot. I haven't done anything on this now. So it's just a bot which I created a couple of hours back. So once we create the bot and it's ready, this is how it will look like. So let me quickly show you what all options we have. So these are the core concepts what we need for a bot, which is called the topics and entities, right? And that's the pretty much core things what we see here. So you see you can author or automate topics, and then we can edit and test your bot, and we can publish it. These are the three simple actions what we have to follow for creating a bot in Power Virtual Agents. Then let me quickly jump into these things. So what is a topic? Topic is something like it's like the trigger point for initiating a discussion, right? So let's say if you're building a bot to fetch some information from your SharePoint list, like let's say there is a HR bot which answers some questions about your policies, right? So then that could be one topic which says answering my HR questions is one topic, and we have to give some trigger phrases to that topic, which will start initiating this topic. So what are trigger phrases? So let's see. So before going to the trigger phrases, let's try to understand the types of topics. There are two types of topics. One is a user topic. Obviously, this is something which we create for the bot. And there are system topics. So system topics, these come by default. So you'll see this in all the bots which you create in PBA. And these are for generic cases like handling a greetings, end of conversation, and goodbye, these kind of things. And coming to the user topics, these are purely custom. Like this depends on what is the functionality we are trying to bring into the bot. Based on that, we can define the user topics. And these four default user topics, you can always delete them. You will not need them once you get a hang of it. But it's a very good starting point. Like you can see, these are pretty exhaustive. So these will show us different examples of how we can author a flow. And we can copy one of the default user topic and start using it. So if we looks like it got closed, let me open it again. So it shows a really long flow where it has multiple conditions. And so if you feel think it's easy to follow this flow, you can just copy this into a different topic. You can come here, you can say make a copy, and you can use it. Or for this demo, I'll be creating a new topic. Let's say for this bot, let's build something like we'll ask this bot about the schedule for the current event what we are having, and it should come up with a list of sessions going on. So I'll just say M365 schedule list. Just give some name to your topic. This really is not displayed anywhere on the interaction with the user from the bot, but this is just for us to keep it manageable. Then these trigger phases are something which is used at the background. So these phrases will be used to build the model at the background, and whenever user types something, the Power Virtual Agents will try to identify the topic based on these phrases what we give. These phrases need not exactly match what the user is going to say, but this is for us to train the model at the background. So I'll just say sessions at M365 Bangalore. What are the sessions at Bangalore? I'll just say sessions, then schedule at M365. Okay. So it's suggested to give at least 5 to 10 phrases. It's better like how many more phrases you give, it will be more accurate. But just for the demo, I have given very simple things here. And once we have given the trigger phrases, we can then go to the authoring canvas. So authoring canvas is a very nice graphical interface. This is similar to most of the other flow designing tools, be it from any other company, any other product. It's very familiar or similar to those. So it's very user friendly. You can just it's like making a flow, like designing a graphical flow, and it just starts working. So now if you see here, these are the trigger phrases. So this is the first action which we can see, which says this authoring chat, or this authoring conversation will start whenever I get a phrase which is matching these things, right? And so for this thing, I'll not show a message. So let's see what all actions we have. These are the pre-built actions what we can easily create. We can ask a question to the user. So let's say once the user asks these the questions which are matching this phrase, I can ask a question back to the user. So in this case, let's say I want to ask the user saying that for what track are you looking the schedule for, right? So I'll just say choose a track. And then if we look at the identities, there are multiple options available here. So if you see, there is age, Boolean, city, color. So these are called entities, which we see here on the left side here. These are called entities. I'll talk about that when we go there. Uh, so for now, I'll select the multiple choice. And once we select multiple choice, we can define custom options here, what will be given as choices or suggestions to the user. So we know that we have two tracks for today's event. So I'll just say IT Pro, and I'll add a new track called Dev. I'll just hit enter. So if you see, the moment I added these two options, it has automatically created a condition for me with two branches. One is for the IT Pro, and one is for the Dev. And it will also, once the user responds with one of these options, it will also save that response in a variable. So this is called a variable, which we can use this within this topic uh, in any of the following actions. So let me rename it to a meaningful one. So I'll say track, and we can also here specify the type. And this is another interesting concept. There are two types of usages for a variable. We can either use a variable within a topic. So a topic is something like what we are seeing right now. This is one topic within this canvas, or you can make it available across all the topics within this bot. So if you want to use it in other topics, then you can change the usage to bot, right? So for now, I'll keep it as topic. And you can see it has automatically changed the variable names here. And what I'll do is, if it's an IT Pro, I'll then send a message to the user saying that here is the schedule for IT Pro. Let me see if I have the URL. I'll just paste the URL for now. I'll not really type all these sessions. And then we can also format the content here. We can put some bold, italics, and number formatting. We can also insert some links or use some variables from the bot. Right. And in this case, I'll send a message saying that here is the schedule for dev track. And I'll just paste the same link. I'll not spend much time here. And once you make your changes, you have to click on save so that it gets updated and your bot will be ready for testing. And once you have authored your canvas, like your authoring canvas is ready, you can click on test your bot here. Then it will immediately open up this testing bot, which you can directly test from here. So let's say I'll ask for sessions. I think that's one of the keyword which we have given in the trigger phrase. It directly matched. And one easy thing for us as we are developing the bot is we can see how the flow is happening. So you see there is a green highlight for this action which says the trigger is executed. Then the question is also executed where it says choose a track, and then it's asking for an IT Pro or a dev track. And so it's waiting here. Then we can say I'll select IT Pro, and you can see it has automatically come to this branch and it has given me this message. Here is a schedule for IT Pro, right? So it's so easy, like how you have seen building this kind of chatbot. Before Power Virtual Agents used to take a lot of effort. It's not pretty straightforward like how we have done it now. So I think within a matter of 5-10 minutes we are able to build this up. And it's not only this, there are other really smart features which we get from here. So let's say I'll say show me the sessions for IT Pro track. Okay, it didn't really work. Okay, so what I'm trying to show here is it usually tries to skip this question. Uh, uh, it usually takes a couple of minutes once we create the board, the authoring canvas and the topic. So what happens is when I say schedule for IT Pro, like in the first interaction itself, when the user is typing one of the choices here, it'll skip that question. It will not really ask a prompt for that question. Okay, it's not really working, but yeah, but that usually works. I think it takes a couple of minutes, around 5 minutes. Then what happens when I type such a sentence where I give the track directly in the directly by the user, it'll skip this question and it'll directly show the response. So in cases where we doesn't want such kind of a behavior, there is something called as a skip question here. So this is how we can control it. So what this does is this is something called as slot filling. So what is slot filling is when the user directly types one of the option, it will automatically assign that to this variable and skip this step, and it will go back to the subsequent steps. And if at all we want to disable that feature, you can say ask every time. So even if the user types the appropriate option in the question itself, it will still skip it and it will ask sorry, it will not skip it, and it will keep asking for the question until user gives the correct response or the correct choice. So that's how the slot filling works. Let's do one last check if it's working now. No, it still doesn't work. Anyway, so that's how slot filling works. And before I walk you through the other options in the topics, let's quickly see what are entities. So entities, like we have seen, these are the default entities. So when we have chosen the action for asking a question and we have selected the identity in the previous step, it has shown us a pre-built set of options. So those are nothing but these pre-built entities. And we always get these entities pre-built, which are common across all the bots. It could be age, Boolean, city, continent. These are pretty standard and generic across the bots. So we will get these predefined ones. And the interesting thing here is you can always define your custom entities. Like let's say if I want to identify some certain set of technologies, like let's say let's call it MS technologies, then I can define the list of items which I think are different MS technologies which we are using specifically in our bot, or which our bot is going to answer questions on. So let's say I'll call Power Virtual Agents as one technology, and then I'll say Microsoft Flow as another technology, right? And then there is another interesting option here which is called smart matching. So what this will do is it will try to identify some misspellings or different variations of the same word or words with same meaning. Like let's say if we say Bangalore and Bengaluru, so these are two variants of the same name, right? So it will try to identify such things using this smart matching. And if at all the words are really different, and if you still want to match, like take the example of Microsoft Flow. It's called Power Automate now, right? So previously it was called Microsoft Flow. So if in such cases we can give as a synonym here. Let's say it's called Power Automate now, and even for Power Virtual Agents, I can say PVA is a synonym for it, right? So like that, if the words are totally different, we can always come up with the synonyms, and it will match these things as the same entity. So that's how we can define our custom entities, and this will really help when we are creating custom actions within our bots, depending on the domain what we are going to work on. So I'll quickly jump back to this topics again, and let's create another topic. Let's say we want to find the weather information. Like let's say the user wants to see the weather. So let's see how easy is it to interact with external systems, right? uh, I'll call this topic as weather info, and the trigger in phases I'll call it weather. Then what is temperature? How is the weather? So I'll not give more. I think just for the demo these are sufficient, and we can go to the authoring canvas. And there is one interesting thing. This is one interesting thing, and a useful difference between the Power Virtual Agents for Teams and the standard Power Virtual Agents online or the Power Virtual Agents web. In Power Virtual Agents Teams, this session is automatically authenticated. Like if you see here, it directly gives me these two variables, which is bot dot user display name and bot dot uh, user ID. So let's see what these values are. And I mean, even in the Power Virtual Agents for web, authenticating the user session is not really that difficult. But with Teams, it just comes inbuilt. Like the user is already authenticated without us doing anything. So let's quickly see what happens with these two variables. So I just saved this flow. I come here and I'll say weather. So it should say hello, my display name. And if you see, this is the reason I have put the bot.user ID. I'll explain you in a while why I mentioned this. So this doesn't really give us any, the login name or the actual user identity here. It's just a masked ID at the background. And we cannot really use it for what I'm going to try in the next steps. So let's see what we are trying to do in this step is getting the weather information, right? And let me go and remove this step. So I'll not show a message. What I'll do is once the user asks for weather, what we'll try to build is we'll try to identify the current office location of the user, and we'll use an external MSN weather API to fetch the weather of that location and show it. So it's like if a user from Bangalore types the question, he'll get the weather of Bangalore, while someone from some other location, let's say New York or some other location, they'll get the weather information from that location. So how can we do this? There are two things here. One is identifying the current user's location. So how we can do this is there is this interesting action called call an action, which is nothing but you can create a Power Automate flow. And so here it directly gives us an option to create a flow. So before we jump into this, yeah, let me click on create flow. So while this is setting up, one important thing which we have to remember here is always try to, or always create the flow using the options what we get from the Power Virtual Agents. So basically within the authoring canvas, that's where you try to create a flow. You can also create a flow directly going to your flow admin center and do it, but that way there are some licensing implications. So when you create it from the Power Virtual Agents authoring canvas, you will get more API call limits for this flows. I think it's around 15,000 if I'm not wrong. We can definitely check the docs on that, but you'll get a better usage limits when we do it from here. So first thing is we'll create this flow, and what are we going to accept as an input is the flow should know the user's display name, right? Because we don't have an user ID. So let's call username, and yeah, that will be our input. So once we get our input, what are we going to do is we are going to make a SharePoint search REST API and try to find out the user's ID, right? How we can do this? Let's quickly create a SharePoint connector, and then I'll use the HTTP action. We can connect to one of our SharePoint sites. I'll connect the root site, and I already have the endpoints ready just to speed up the process. So this is nothing but a search endpoint, a REST API endpoint, and it's querying the people result source. And here the query text will be my username, which I've got from here, right? And once I get the response, let me create a variable. So I'll call it login name. It's a type of string, and this is what I'll use as an expression. Uh, this is basically reading the JSON. Okay, this is reading the JSON from the SharePoint call, and I'm also encoding this URI because we'll be passing this to the user profile REST endpoint of SharePoint to get the login name of the user. So let's not spend much time here. So once here we get the login name, then I'll make a call to another call to the SharePoint REST API. Let me use the HTTP call again. And here I have the call to get office location of the user. So let's me select the site. So if you see here, what we are doing is we are calling the get user profile property for, and the account name is what we have to pass. Account name is what we got into our variable, and that's all we have. Now what this will do is this will give us the login ID. So I'll initialize another variable. So here we are going to get the office, sorry, not the login ID. We already got the login ID. So here we are trying to get the office location of the current user, which we queried from the user profile API. So now we get the office location. Then once we have it, what I'm going to do is I'll add an action which is called MSN weather. Then it says get forecast for today, and here I'll just pass the office location, and we'll send the response back. So we'll send what? We'll send the location of the user. I'll just call it location. This is the identified office of the user, and I'll also send the temperature. I'll just say temp, and we have this is temperature. Just select a few of the parameters, whatever we need, and I think that's it. So with this, we can save our flow. Before saving the flow, you can always change the name. It's a good thing to change. Otherwise, all the flows, all the flow actions which we create will have the same name. So let's call it get users weather info. So this will be my flow action name. Looks like there is some issue. Okay, so in the expressions I'm using, I think I have to rename these steps to make it simpler. So I'll rename this to search. That's the search call I'm making, and I'll rename this to profile. So I'm making the profile call. I think they should fix my issues. Yeah. So once this is saved, let's quickly continue creating our topic in the authoring canvas. So if you see here, this is where we tried to call an action and created clicked on create a flow. But now we'll see the custom flow which we have created. We can just select this and it will automatically identify that it expects an input, which is the username. So here I'll use bot.user display name, and it is giving back us two output variables. One is the location and the temperature. So let's send this info back to the user saying that the temperature for the location name, which is location, and I'll say is this. That's it. So if you've seen till now, I think there's not much of a code which we have written. It's all about configuring things. We have created a flow which talks to SharePoint to identify the user's location, and then we have called the MSN weather action to find the weather of that location. So let me just test it. Okay, looks like there is some issue with the flow.
I think it is because office location variable is Boolean. It should be text, I
Okay.
think.
Okay, thank you for that. I think I've selected it wrong. Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, hopefully it should work now. Yeah, so yeah, I think we didn't remove this message, so it's still showing this, and then it says the temperature for Bangalore is so and so. So that's how easy it is to really, interact with external APIs, interact with SharePoint, and once you're into Flow, it's like the possibilities are many. You can also talk to the Graph APIs or any other product within the Microsoft 365 suite. But one thing we have to remember here is whenever we are using the premium connectors here, we might have to go to a Power Apps standard licensing, which is the Power Virtual Agent standard licensing, which is the Power Virtual Agents online, where we have to buy for the premium features. So if at all you're not keen into spending so much of money there, you can always try to avoid using the premium connectors here, and we are good using this model. So that's about how we can really talk with the external APIs. And before we go into the few other topics, which is analytics and publishing, there is another interesting aspect which I want to show is about the authentication and the greeting message. Like we have seen, we can find who is the current logged in user within our team session. But if you see, let's say if the bot just opens up, within your team session, when it opens, you want to really send a customized greeting message to the user, or you want to give a heads up to the user saying what is this bot capable of. For this thing, there's no, I mean, it's not a straightforward way of doing it, but you can always customize that. Always we have to come to this system topic and find this greetings topic. So here, this is the topic which gets triggered as soon as a user opens the bot. It doesn't really expect the user to send any message or start the conversation. The bot itself will start the conversation, and here you can really customize this message. Let's say if you want to really personalize it and say welcome the user with the name, you can always say hi, and you can use the display name. So let me just save it. And this particular feature, we cannot really test it here. Even if you say reset, it will not immediately trigger the action, but you can always test this when you publish it into your actual Teams channel. So I'll quickly show you how we can test it. So this is one way of testing it using the testing panel what we have here. Another way is you can actually go to the publish tab, and even before publishing, you can click on this open the bot. And this is the normal process what happens when you add the bot. So it will just ask you to add it, and it will install it into your Teams. And if you see here, it immediately starts giving you these prompts. So even before the user started to interact with the bot, it has given us these messages. So why we are not seeing the name here, even though we have put it in the authoring canvases, because I haven't published the bot. So if you're not publishing the bot, it will still use the previously published data model and previously published data to show the information. So that's the reason it's not showing the current one. So let's jump back to my Power Virtual Agents. So like we discussed, I think these are the core concepts, I would say, topics and entities, and how do we interact with external APIs using Power Automate. And so over the last 2 years, based on what I've seen, I think at least 80 to 90% of the bot scenarios, like be it talking with the, answering simple questions or really interacting with any external system at the background, most of the scenarios can be easily handled with Power Virtual Agents. And for little advanced and complex scenarios, we can definitely fall back to the standard bot framework, where we really need developers to build some custom skills there. And there is this interesting feature here called skills. So if you look at here within manage for each bot, so skills is something like you can bring in more advanced features to Power Virtual Agents. Like let's say you can create a custom series of actions, like sending a mail and creating a ticket into your ticketing system, or some kind of actions like that. You can define such kind of a complex action using your bot framework as a skill, and that can be imported into your Power Virtual Agents, and you can start using it, right? That's about the skills. And another thing which we have to take care is the security. So here, like I mentioned before, um, let's get back to this later. So the authentication is what happens by default. So you can always say if you really don't want any authentication, you can just turn it off. Or when you say only for teams, like it's mentioned here, it will automatically authenticate the current user session, and it will give you the user ID and user display name. And for little advanced scenarios, like let's say you have your own application which is with hello, can you guys still hear me?
Yes, Ram. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. So with the little advanced scenarios, what we can do is you can always switch to this manual mode, where you can connect your Power Virtual Agents bot to any OAuth provider. So it could be Azure AD, or it can be a generic OAuth 2 provider. Once you provide all these things, it's just about providing these details. We don't have to really code anything or develop anything to authenticating the user. So once we give these things and configure it, uh, and if the authentication is enabled, what happens is the Power Virtual Agents will automatically show a sign in prompt to the user, where they can sign in themselves using this authentication provider. And the beauty here is once the user is authenticated, you will get all the authentication variables, including the authentication token. So you can actually use this authentication token and make calls to your external application, which is using the Azure AD or whatever identity provider you have. So it's really seamless. I think once we configure it and we start using it, it will be very easy to use. So that's very important thing about the authentication. And then coming back to the access, you can always say at the beginning, if you see when we are creating the bot, it has asked us to select a team. So why is this? Is to control the access. So there are two ways or two different scenarios where you can use your bot. One is you can say make my bot accessible only within my team. So this is the M365 Bangalore team which I have selected at the beginning. Or I can say this can be available to anyone within my organization. So these are the two access levels which we can configure for your bot. And I'll quickly touch upon the channels. So like we discussed at the beginning, the two variants what we have. So for Power Virtual Agents for Teams, this is the only channel which we can use. And if you're looking for other channels, like you can also host this bot on your custom website. So this will be just a JavaScript code which you can embed into your any website. And if you see, this is a premium channel. So for this, you have to switch to your Power Virtual Agent standard licensing, which is true for all the other connectors apart from the teams. That's about the channels, and in the details I think this is pretty straightforward. You can change the name and icons. And coming to the last part is about publishing. So for publishing your bot, there are again two options. So when you publish the bot, uh, you can either share this bot within your organization. So you can say share this with my entire organization. Then it goes for an admin approval. So from the team's admin center, the team's admin has to approve it. So I have already done it. So it says available in App Store. Otherwise, you can also share it only within your team. So that is also possible. So this thing we have to make sure we have to publish it. Otherwise, whatever we are seeing, that will not be the same what other users will see until you publish it. And that's about publishing. And the last topic, which before we close, is the analytics part. So this, as I said, at the background, it uses the Power BI, and it has some exhaustive set of reporting. So it will show you what is the customer satisfaction, and how many sessions we had, and how many interactions did the user make with the bot, and some information on the billing and such stuff, right? So that's all which I wanted to show. Where are my slides? Okay, so these are the few references. These are the official docs which I strongly recommend to always follow this to get the latest updates. And there is this interesting documentation again, which is the new set of features which will be available between, I think this is between October and March next year, if I'm not wrong. Let's quickly see. Yeah, so this is between October and March next year. So this will give us what all new features are going to come into Power Virtual Agents. So if you can see, these are the things which are already available and generally available. And one interesting thing which I'm eagerly waiting for is this, which says run flow connectors as the user. So this will actually run the flow on the user's context rather than on the account which we created for the connection, right? So once we have this, we can really run personalized actions. Like one example which I can think of is you can run custom search queries for the user and find relevant information for him, and return it back to the user from the bot. So yeah, so that's about this new upcoming features. I would strongly recommend you can go about and see what all is upcoming. And yeah, before I close, I think it's exactly 45 minutes. Thank you guys. Thanks for listening to this session, and we can take up any questions if there are any.
Yeah, thank you, Ram. Really nice session and demo. Anyone have any questions to ask for Ram?